We've seen how we can apply pivot table styles to effectively give our pivot table some colour, some background colour, some banded rows, some banded columns, but the built-in styles might not be enough for your desire. So we can actually create our own. So in the drop list of pivot table styles, there is an option for a new pivot table style. If we select that option, we then have a dialog box for creating that style. So the first thing is to give it a sensible name. So I'm going to call mine Guy Style. And then we need to go through and format each of the options of a pivot table. So we've got the first column. What should that look like? Well, we're going to format. We can change the background color to green, and we can change the font to white. Okay, and you get a preview then of the first column. So this is your sort of pivot table preview. We could format the header row. I'm going to go for color white and a dark green again. Let's go darker green for the header row, and you can see that will appear across there. First column stripe, format, and let's go very light green. Okay, and you can see how that then becomes the striping column. First row stripe, format, again let's go very light green. So if people select banded rows, banded columns, they're going to look like this with the background color in green. The whole table, format. I'm going to format the whole table's border, but not everything else. So outline and inside. Actually, let's have very dark green and do that again, outline and inside. Okay, and you can see we then get borders on the table. So those values that I've edited are now in bold. The other ones are not, but I can set all of these subtotals, blank rows, column subheadings, row subheadings, grand total row. Let's format that. Make that have a dark green background and white text, and also bold. Okay, so I've set up a few of the options. If I want to spend weeks on this, I could format absolutely every single option within my pivot table style, and I can even set this as the default for new pivot tables. I'm not going to do that, but we'll keep it as Guy Style. Okay, creates the style, and we'll then see that style in the list as a custom pivot, which I can then choose. And if I turn on the banded columns, I see my lighter green. If I turn on the banded rows, I see my lighter green. And my totals should be in bold on a dark background. So I've created my own custom pivot table style that I can now apply to any pivot table within this workbook. If I want to use it in other workbooks, I actually have to move it into those workbooks. So if I wanted this fantastic style that I've built, Yucky Green, and I wanted to use it in another Excel file, so for example, the employees _ multiple pivots. So in here, I'd quite like this to be that Yucky Green option. At the moment, if I go to design and look in the pivot table styles, I don't have the Yucky Green option, Guy Styles, to choose from. But it doesn't take too long for that to happen. We go back to our original Excel file where I've created the style. We then select the pivot table, which I can do from the Pivot Table Tools ribbon, Analyze, Actions, Select, Entire Pivot Table. I then copy, move round to the pivot table where I would like the style, and paste the whole pivot table into a new sheet. Now I'm not actually interested in this data that's come in or the pivot table. I'm just using the tools of Excel. So I'm actually going to delete this new sheet. Yes, I'm sure. Now what we'll find, if we now go to the pivots within this new sheet, click into a pivot table, go up to the Design sub-ribbon of the Pivot Table Tools ribbon. Under the Pivot Table Styles, I find my custom style now exists, Guy Style. So I can click that and it will apply to this particular pivot table. So to move a style from one workbook to another, we simply copy and paste the pivot table and then throw the pivot table away, and it leaves behind the custom style for use in that particular workbook. So I've applied to that pivot table, and I could apply it to this pivot table as it stays in the custom style list, and that too gets the Yucky Green color scheme. Perhaps should have chosen some nicer colors such as red and pinks, but we can see it in action. So you create that style in one particular book, and then you can copy and paste it into another book.